Dave Nicholson, thank you ever so much for joining us in the Snowman Rally virtual rallython. I'm really looking forward to your recollections and stories from the years that you've been competing. But for those that might not know you, I think it's really great for people to understand a little bit about your background over many, many years as a professional co-driver, but also as a team member. Could you give us a short introduction to yourself for those that might not know you?
Yes, let me welcome you to my rally office first. My wife does insist on calling it our dining room, but I have to live with that. She did, in a weak moment, allow me to do the wall behind me with bookcases, you can see, to cater for my other hobby of rally books. I She insists, she said occasionally. Um, I misunderstood that as being frequently, but that's a small argument we have. Yes, I've been rallying forever, basically, in most people's eyes. Started off in the normal way doing road rallies. Did a bit of driving as well until money became a problem and navigating was a much more sensible option. Worked hard at improving it, and stage rallies came along eventually. And again, tried very hard to stay on the maps, not just sit there as the sack of potatoes implies. That's often referred to people in those days. And learn to read the maps on the little tracks in the forest and the private roads, and basically contribute to the performance of the car. Come the middle 80s, I had drivers who were looking at doing national championships, PTRDA and the UK National Championship. And with John Brown in his ex-works Escort Mark II, we achieved some good national results. And for me, it was the first wins at national level. And then following that with Simon Davison, he had the right head on his shoulders and the right ideas to get the points in for the year. And we managed to tie up the Group A National Championship in '85 in a Vauxhall supported Astra, and in the works VW Golf in '86. That brought about a close association with David Sutton Motorsport, who were running the VW and Audi teams in those days, which led to me working full-time for them. So what had been a very interesting and fun hobby became a job, which was brilliant. And that carried on until 1990, 91, when full-time work dried up for various reasons, but I went freelance and still managed to keep solvent. Eventually tying up with a lot of work in the Middle East, with initially with Rothmans and their driver Saeed Al Hajri, moving on to Saudi driver Mamdouh Kayat, who with him in the Lancia Integrale Deltona, run by Italian team ART, we won the FIA Middle East Championship, which was quite a feather in our cap. Yeah. 2 years later, I was asked to go back again to sit with a young Arab driver from Dubai in a two-car team of factory Toyota Celicas. And I was to bring on the young guy. Unfortunately, the number one driver didn't win the championship, but we got second place, which was very good experience. And the advantage of being freelance was I picked up a few other events along the way, which I think we'll be talking about a little bit later.
Well, it's great experience to move from the snow to the sand, I would say.
Yes, I retired from competitive participation in the car at the end of '97. At the time, I had an interview with ProDrive and was offered a job there doing the logistics coordination. And unfortunately, when Subaru pulled the plug and the team folded, that was sort of the end of my full-time association in the sport.
Mm.
But,
It's
yeah,
great. A huge,
but not bad.
huge background and
Young lad from
stories.
Northumberland. Yeah.
It's, you competed. We talked earlier. You've competed in the Snowman Rally, quite unusually, I'd say, for a travelling person, meaning coming all the way up to Scotland, on
Long
three
way.
different decades, in three different situations. Could you tell us a little bit about your three Snowman rallies, Dave, and what success came from them?
Yes, the first one rather came out of the blue. I'd been doing the Scottish Championship events a bit ad hoc, not really going for the championship at all, with a Northumbrian farmer friend and fellow club member at Hexham, Alan Anderson. And he bought a well-known car in the Scottish Championship, Bill Taylor's Royal Bank car. And the first event we did this year in 75 was the Snowman Rally. I don't remember too much about what happened in between us traveling up and ending the rally. But the traveling up bit was quite adventurous. We were in the farm Range Rover with a trailer on the back and a lot of snow and ice going over the fells on the way to Inverness. A few moments when the trailer tried to beat us getting to Inverness, along with a lot of other people, I guess, same problems. And on the event itself, as I say, I don't recall too much, but we had a rather fiery exit from the event. Unfortunately for us, the furthest north stage, I believe, at Lossiemouth, heading up to Lossiemouth. We were doing reasonably well on the stage. You know, we're not competing with the top guys. We're a genuine clubman in those days. And there was a problem with the electrics on the dashboard and such, and Alan was trying to interrupt me reading the bends off the map and everything and saying that the rev counter is not working. And then the water temperature gauge was flicking from cold to hot and so on. Not too long after that, the gear stick gaiter, which wasn't leather, it was a plasticky thing, suddenly melted and the flame shot up past the gear stick between us in the car. The flame very quickly caught the sun visors in the car, which are just conventional foam with a vinyl lining, and they just went up in flames and burnt out to a frame in seconds, if that even. And the headlining started catching fire. There was plastic bits dropping down on our knees and everything, getting a little bit of a panicky situation. I sort of told him that we only had about 1.5 miles to go to get to the end of the stage. We'd already deployed the in-car extinguishers, the plumbed-in ones, which didn't seem to be having any effect at all. But the engine was still going. So a little bit of hurried discussion. We said, we'll get to the end. There are going to be more people there, a bit more chance of saving as much of the car as we could. And so we carried on. We came, I think we actually crossed the flying finish. Couldn't be 100% about that, whether it records a time for us in the archives. But we could see the long, straight, slight downhill to the stop control at the end. But by this time, the flames were getting pretty serious, seats starting to catch fire and stuff like this. And the smoke that was generated from all that was starting to smoke out the glass. So it was getting very hard to see where we're going as well.
Yeah.
And I think there was something frightened him a little bit, and he just stood on the anchors, and the car slewed round to the right a bit, and then all of a sudden came to a very abrupt stop. We bailed out, remembering to bring the handhelds with us. And I actually went back in again because I had a new rally jacket in the back on the roll cage behind me, and I wasn't going to leave that behind. So I dove back in and got that out. It did get singed, unfortunately. And with the extinguishers, Alan was trying to squirt them through the front grille and do something. And only when that was obviously not achieving anything, and I think one more car had arrived and would use their extinguishers, that we realized the thing that had stopped us so quickly was a big stone horse trough buried in the hedge at the side of the track. And it was full of water. So off with the helmets, and we were trying to put water on top, which was giving a lot of steam, but not doing much else. And then, very luckily for us, at the bottom where the stop control was, there was a little house there, whether it was a farm or just a farm worker's cottage or something, not sure. But there was a tractor there with a front loader on it. And this guy had jumped into it and was bouncing up the field by the side of the track, coming up towards us. And whether he had experience of this before or not on the farm, I don't know, but he knew exactly what to do. He dropped the bucket down as before he got to us, scooped up a big load of soft earth and popped it over the fence and on top of the bonnet of the car. And it worked. The fire just died very quickly. It did cause a lot of problems afterwards because it baked like clay with the heat and everything. And I think it was a hammer and chisel job to get all this off. We could have actually had a nice, perfect mold for a rally car, I guess, but that wasn't Alan's priority when he came to start repairing the car. So that was quite an exciting finish to the first Snowman rally for me.
Probably a good reason then for you to take a few years out from the Snowman.
Well, I vowed never to go back again, of course, but I thought obviously we're not meant to be, you know.
Absolutely. But then your next event in the Snowman was 89, and a very successful outing for you, but maybe one full of challenges.
It was, but it didn't start off very well. It was the first event for the brand new JBM Audi team. David Sutton had been instructed by VAG, Audi UK, to sell off all the parts that they owned. And I'd been handling a lot of the day-to-day business on that, making lists of spare parts and history of parts and the major parts and all this sort of thing. And a Scotsman called Bob Locke, who was a software engineer and making very good money selling software to the likes of Audi themselves and Cummins Engines, quite a few other companies. He, at the end of it all, asked me if I'd like to go with all the parts and everything and work with him to set this team up. Yeah, so we being a Scotsman, he wanted to do a lot of Scottish events, obviously. He was from Airdrie area originally, although he was now living in the Isle of Man, hence the GBM Audi team name for the team. And the Snowman was going to be the first one, fairly near the beginning of the year. And in the meantime, we managed to pull a deal together with Castrol to run Andrew Wood and Dougie Patterson, with a bit of help from Wagon Finance as well, Dougie's employees. I had experience of them. I had a very good year running Andrew and Dougie in a Golf GTI the previous year in the British Championship. And we got on very well. He's an excellent driver and good guy to work with as well. So when the inquiry came through, I was all behind it. And we put some work in at the very last minute, did the deal with Castrol. The problem was we had only just started building a new car, an Audi 90 Quattro, the new generation, a similar body shape to the A4 nowadays. Yeah. And we'd been over to Audi Sport in Ingolstadt in Germany. They had one car that they built, a prototype, and they allowed us to copy everything on that, to buy all the correct parts. And we were halfway through building this car. So with only a couple of weeks to go to the event, it was a decision, right, okay, Andrew is going to have this new car, which was destined for Bob initially. And we we'd enter two cars in the Snowman. We would, if all went well, we would have the Coupe Quattro that had come from David Sutton, David Llewellyn car, and we'd have the new car for Andrew, resplendent in burgundy red Castrol Cintron X synthetic oil colours. We had at least one all-nighter leading up to the rally, working in the workshops, and Bob actually set off with the coupe, which was already prepared. And if it didn't work out, then Andrew would jump into that and get some Quattro experience, because it was a new thing for him, obviously. No shakedown for him, no pre-event test, nothing. In the deep end. I was left behind to coordinate the finishing of the car, a little local shakedown for us, and then to trailer it up to Inverness. We had a bit of drama on the way up. The weather wasn't too bad, not as bad as my first experience going up there, but we did have we were towing with Land Rover station wagons, the 12-seater ones, so they were ideal for the job. But we were sharing the driving. We were all very tired to start with anyway, because we'd worked right through the night previously. And Bob had reorganized scrutineering for us on the Saturday morning for Andrew's car. But it came to the time when the young apprentice mechanic had to do his share of the driving, and we were all giving it zeds in the seat beside him. And I was in the navigator seat, and a couple of guys in the back as well. And he woke me up somewhere around about Perth, banging on my arm and said, "Wake up, wake up. I've just realised we're below the into the red on the fuel gauge." And this was something like 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning or something.
Oh. Only 120 miles to go or something like that.
Yes. Anyway, we'll cut a long story short, I managed to call the AA, get a garage appointed to come out to us and get the number of the garage and basically bribe him to bring a big jerry can of fuel rather than a little 5-litre can.
Yeah.
And that would be enough to get us at least close to Inverness when garages are starting to open, or possibly even all the way. And our vans will be there with fuel and everything.
Yeah.
So we got there. It was a very rushed scrutineering job, very rushed. Andrew was actually at the point of having the seat adjusted for him in the Coupe Quattro, thinking we weren't going to make it.
Yeah.
There had been various telephone calls, but the coverage wasn't brilliant, particularly in the Highlands in those days. And I think it took about 20 calls to get a couple of sentences completed. So they weren't really sure we were going to make it, but we did. And in some ways, that sort of has you already wound up and going ready for the rally. So we had no pre-planning or anything. We just started the rally on gravel tires, both cars, which was a big mistake because we headed off into the Black Isle. And as you gained height it was quite obvious there was a lot of snow.
Yeah.
Which was a big problem. Although it was four-wheel drive, the Audi, put it on big fat gravel tires, and you couldn't get it to understeer is very prominent in those four-wheel drive cars in those days anyway. So to actually get it to turn into the corner was quite a problem. Once you're on the straight, okay, you could give it some big licks and go for it. So the first, I think it was 2 or maybe 3 stages, we weren't doing very well at all. But we then had a service, and we got some snow tires on, and that made a lot of difference. And I mean, I was in with Bob in the Coupe Quattro at this point, of course. Andrew and Dougie were away, but they didn't get very far, unfortunately, because I think it was a hold piston. We had quite a long learning problem with the new car and the new engine, which was very highly tuned, too highly tuned for UK fuel, for warmer temperatures in the summer. So it took a while to iron out all those problems. Bob and I were going quite well though with these tires on, and he was really starting to enjoy the car. He hadn't been in the forest with the car at all. before, and he wasn't really a particularly experienced rally driver either. He'd had a few goes, and he was doing very well, very impressive, you know. And we ended up second overall, which was a very, very pleasing result. A bit sad for Andrew, of course. We'd like to have seen him up there in front of us, but it wasn't to be.
A fantastic result, and particularly for a co-driver that probably wasn't that prepared going into the car, I guess.
Well, I thought this is, you know, until we were halfway through the event, I thought, yeah, this is what Snowman's all about. A long journey for a bad result, you know.
None of them ever got a plan. I know that's for sure, you know.
Yeah.
So that was, am I right in saying that was 89 days that you did that year's event with Bob, and you finished runner-up spot?
Yeah.
Fantastic result. And then he rejoined us in the third decade in 1990, again in a GBM Audi.
Yes, we built the second new Audi 90 Quattro in the middle of the year before, and Bob and I debuted that on the Scottish Rally. And we'd partway through the year brought on another client for the team in Glyn Jones, a Welsh driver. I'd worked with Glyn as well at David Sutton Motorsport. He'd hired the previous Coupe Quattro, David Llewellyn Quattro, done the RAC rally with it. And I knew him as a competitor against me in typically in Phil Collins' Opel Mantas.
Okay.
Very competitive national driver, and the guy who really loved his rallying. And when we did the deal, Bob said, well, we'll get you into the Snowman and to get you sorted in the team and everything else, because obviously he didn't know any of the people as so Dave will sit with you, and so that was nice for me, another new driver to experience. Although I knew the car obviously by this point. So we headed up. We didn't have any of the pre-event dramas this time, so I thought maybe luck is changing. The one thing I did insist on was that we learned from the previous year, and we sent a scout out. You have to miss his breakfast, unfortunately, because we actually got to the hotel the night before this time.
Nice.
Yeah, really getting professional now. And we sent him up to the first stages to get as close as he could to see the conditions and call us back and everything. And unfortunately, we made the wrong decision again. And the decision was to go on gravel. And as we traveled up there, the snow started coming down. I thought, oh dear, here we go again. And I believe on the video that I saw recently, there's a very embarrassing picture of some young whippersnapper Scotsman, McRae or something, overtaking us in a two-wheel drive car as we try to get the understeering Quattro to go around the corner. However, once we got onto the correct tyres, we did avenge ourselves of that, and must have quite frightened him when we overtook him at about 40 miles an hour extra to what he was doing, going up a very snowy hill with the Quattro showing a clean pair of heels there.
Yeah.
We were going very well. I thought this was possibly going to be the win.
Yeah.
We had quite a deficit again to make up from the first few stages, but we were really reeling them in quite nicely. And the conditions were making, it was a very snowy rally that year. Conditions were making it that it wasn't consistently one of the other competitors who was always at the front. So although we weren't winning every stage, as far as the current leader was concerned at any point, we were creeping up there. Going into the last couple of stages, I had time to get all the times of the people that were close to us and to work out what we needed, if it made sense, to try and attack for the win.
Yeah.
We decided to do it, but having said that, Glyn was very aware that he wasn't a high budget client, and credit to him, was not prepared to risk all damaging the car
Yeah.
for a personal triumph. So, hats off to him for that. But going into last stage, I thought we had a 50-50 chance at least of pipping the car that we were looking to overtake. And it was going well until something like 2/3 of the way through the stage, all of a sudden, we didn't even recall a noise or anything, but all of a sudden something broke and the car slowed round off the road and stuck in the snow on the side. When we went back to see what had happened, there was a big chunk of the Scottish mainland was sticking up at the side of the track, and we were just half an inch too close to it, and a tiny little nick in the front wheel, and it had just ripped the bottom arm out of the aluminium suspension strut with a big chunk of the strut. And I guess if budget hadn't been a consideration, we could have forced the car to come out with one wheel pushed up into the wheel arch and three wheels doing the job. But that probably would have destroyed the transmission and everything. And Glyn just wasn't going to do that, So that was us out, unfortunately.
The third, I mean, for me, listening to your story, it's fire, it's snow, and it's the big bang. That's how it comes across.
I wish we could forget the first and last, concentrate on the middle one, but yeah.
I remember spectating in these events and just the sheer excitement of seeing these Audis out in the professional team. It was always, for me, really great to see in those days. And then moving on a little bit from the Snowman, we've got a few minutes left that we can talk about. Again, go back a little bit to your career. You had a lot of time with David Sutton, and you then had some time with ProDrive as well.
Yes.
I mean, from all this career that you've had, what's given you the most personal satisfaction in your career?
At each of the eras involved, obviously, a lot of things changed throughout those years. It was managing to learn and perfect what was needed at that time.
Yeah.
Way back in the road rally days, to master the reading of the maps and the instructions to the driver. And there wasn't much in the way of management or logistics in those days. Fairly long single night events.
Yeah.
Then getting into the stage events, the bigger ones, a lot more logistical issues come into it. Some tactics, tires obviously is always there, and then working for the teams rather than just being a competitor. That brings in an awful lot of other stuff, from the planning side, which I absolutely loved, doing all the service scheduling and such. I really enjoyed doing that. I had some good people teaching me. Phil Short was one of the early ones. And a lot of the things, the public watching the event would have no idea about what was going on at the job I was doing. On the event itself, normally I would either be traveling in the management car, if it was a fairly small event in terms of number of cars we were running. If we were pushed with a lot of cars, or in the old days when you had 5-day events and every night was in a different location, I might well be either driving or navigating a chase car with an engineer and a mechanic.
Yeah.
Fantastic experience, that. And of course, by the time I got to ProDrive, I mean, they were the real professionals. They'd perfected everything. We had the computer systems for the lifing of all the major components, everybody was skilled, whereas normally on the smaller teams, you're obviously bringing new people in at the same time as working with the old hands.
Yeah.
But so it was very enjoyable to feel that I'd more or less perfected. I wouldn't say I was perfect, but more or less got the hang of whatever was appropriate at that time,
Yeah.
as things changed over time.
But I know that one of your heroes is Roger Clark.
Oh yes,
And you'd maybe you can tell us very a short time about your experience of co-driving for Roger Clark, who was a competitor in the Snowman quite a few times.
yes. Well, all the years I was doing the Scottish Championship, not the full championship, but hopping over the border from Northumberland to do the certainly the ones in.
Testing.
You know, you spent plenty of time when in the Roman era coming the other way, so we were getting our own back. Roger was always the one who just walked away with the events, so in most cases anyway. And I had actually at David Sutton's worked with him a fair bit. In fact, his second son, Matthew, was working in the team with us. I've shared rooms with him on events in Greece and so on. So knew him quite well by this point, and we were getting into historic rally cars more and more as the money involved at the top level, even the Group A cars, was becoming prohibitive for most customers. Obviously, David Sutton had the history with Cortinas and Escorts, so it was a natural move to go back and recreate that. And this particular car was a Lotus Cortina, which I was involved in going out to the States, checking out the car and shipping it back in the preparation of it. I'd done 2 or 3 events with David Sutton driving in it, Circuit of Ireland, Targa Rusticana, 1 or 2 more. And I did some testing with Roger. Roger used the car with Tony Mason on the RAC Historic Rally, the forerunner of the Roger Albert Clark Rally, which is now named after him, which is really the historic RAC Rally of Great Britain. He did an early event in the car, and the car wasn't up to the level of the top competitors in the sport, typically the Scandinavians coming over with Escorts or Volvos or whatever, Porsches as well. We hadn't built, David Sutton had built the car as a replica, a very close replica of the cars as they were in the day. He thought that was what was wanted. In truth, the technology had moved on quite a bit, particularly with brake materials, with suspensions, with some of the materials that when you were allowed to change them. And Roger was a bit disappointed to struggle to be in the top 10 even on this previous year. So we contacted Gartrack, who were fantastic fabricators of stuff for Escorts and such, and had personal experience with David Sutton as being his ex-employees who left when he left London to set up the company. And we spent some time testing, and they were fabricating suspension units and new pickup points and all this sort of thing. And I was in the car with Roger doing the timings, getting the impressions back for the engineers. Roger had a reputation for not being a particularly good test driver. He was very much, if the car's a problem, I'll drive around it, and he will still be quite fast. But that's when you're testing, that's not the objective at all. You're trying to find the differences. So I spent a lot of time with him, and then just before the event, it suddenly became known that Tony wasn't able to do the rally with him. So opportunity of a lifetime for me to sit in with Roger on the 4-day historic RAC rally.
And what result did you come away with from that event?
We finished 3rd overall, which was fantastic. But it was actually disappointing because we dropped something like 48 seconds in the first 3 stages. because Roger was driving on site, he wouldn't trust in the information that was coming to him because he'd never had it in that detail previously. Off the maps, no pace notes. So he was basically driving the way he always drove.
Yeah.
In the days when the maps weren't as good as they are nowadays. And we ended up something like 20 seconds from winning the rally or something like that at the end. So
Wow.
we could easily have been the winners. Two Swedes beat us,
Yeah.
one in a Porsche and the other in a Volvo, who happens to be Peter Solberg's father-in-law, and his navigator is Peter's present wife.
Okay.
No real disgrace there, you know.
No, not at all. Not at all.
But
Dave, it's been
fantastic event. All sorts of stages, from Mickey Mouse stuff around karting tracks to full-blooded Welsh forests.
no,
Brilliant
great.
event.
Just to finish off, Dave, obviously you've sat with so many drivers. I mean, your CV is so impressive. You've experienced so many drivers as well in the teams. But if you could go back in time and do one Snowman rally, let's call it a snowy event, who would your dream driver be, and what would the dream car be, just for the experience?
I can't choose the event or the time of year or
No,
the
it's
era.
got to be the Snowman.
It's got to be the Snowman. Okay. I would only hope that it is a snowy snowman then.
Usually is.
And I'm going to choose a Saab two-stroke.
Okay.
Which must be the most underpowered car in the field and only two-wheel drive. But I would want to have the man, Stig, in the other seat.
Oh, what a fantastic
and I think
combination.
that combination in a snow rally, I think that would do it.
Something.
Yeah.
Dave, that's a great way to finish our interview on. I can't thank you enough. You've not only given us an interview, but also for some people, you've been really helping us behind the scenes with other interviews. So thank you, not just for today, but all the support you've given to helping our event run on March the 6th. Thanks a lot, Dave. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Thank you.